What's the most disturbing scene from a movie? I wish I could remember the name of the movie. It may have been a made-for-TV movie, but it's basically a story about a woman in prison who befriends a prison mortuary director and he agrees to help her escape. The plan is for her to sneak into the mortuary and hide herself in the coffin of the next person that dies, and he will come dig her out when the coast is clear. I can't remember the exact specifics of how this works, but she does just that. Cut to her lighting a match in the coffin buried 6 feet underground, and the dead person in the coffin with her is the dang prison mortuary director. No one is coming to dig her out. Fade to black as she screams in absolute terror. Watched it like 30 years ago and I still think about it weekly. A Mustard, where they tie some of the people onto a rope that's attached to a weight and throw the weight over the side of the ship. They get dragged off one by one into the sea. Saw it when I was in 5th grade and couldn't finish the movie and haven't forgotten it since. Also the woman with her baby who just decided to jump into the ocean knowing full well she would die because it was a better alternative than the absolute heck that was happening on that ship. That one always stuck with me as well. In The Fly, when Brundtler Fly, Jeff Goldblum, melts the boyfriend's hand off down to the wrist with his vomit. He grins at him as he's absolutely freaking out, and after he falls on his back, vomits on his exposed ankle, melting his foot off, with the shoe still on. Great special effects. Saw it as a kid, and I've been hooked on gory films ever since. The arm wrestling scene did it for me. Learned what a compound fracture was. All the scenes from Dead Girl where guys rape a female zombie they have strapped to a table. Probably. Specifically, the scene where they cut a new hole and use that. I do not recommend that movie. For anyone curious by this comment, Dead Girl as a movie is bad. Not like gross you out, horrify you bad. More like I saw it for free and want my money back bad. It was an attempt at shock filmmaking that missed its mark. Mr. Creosote's scene from Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. The whole vomiting and engulfing of food is already quite sickening, and after that there's the explosion scene where he literally explodes like a human balloon. This scene was apparently too much for Quentin Tarantino. The brainwashing scene from 1984. Basically, Winston is tied down while a guy holds up 4 fingers and asks him how many fingers he's holding up. Winston answers 4, and is tortured until he says, and genuinely believes, that the guy is holding up 5 fingers. It's tragic to see his resistance well and truly obliterated. But for me, the most disturbing part can only be found in the original book. When asked again how many fingers the guy's holding up, Winston hesitates. He knows the answer, but he doesn't know what he's supposed to say. The movie is rough, but I have read the book and it's so much more shattering. Seeing all that story build up and development go on and on trough chapters, truly thinking that the characters are safe and good, then see how all of that gets completely obliterated and run to the ground in just the very few first pages of the last chapter. Green Mile. That scene where that mofo does not soak that thingy before execution. Ah fuck Percy Whitmore. When I was younger it was the thing at the beginning when the dog mutilates and tears itself apart turning into the alien. Pretty much all the death scenes in that were disturbing, with the shape-shifting alien including the man's head running across the floor after growing legs. The Thing was such a great movie. I watch it every time the snow falls, to get in the mood. Maybe not the top of the list, but the first thing that pops into my head is the hobbling scene from Misery. Dang, Kathy Bates terrifies me to this day. Also, a long time back, there was a scene in a movie on late night television. A girl was running through the woods from 2 guys. One surprises her and she manages to get his shotgun. She blows his head off. The thing is, they show enough of his face being lifted up and blown away. It was absolutely terrifying. No idea the movie. No interest in finding out. LOL. I read Misery in high school as an independent novel study. That scene is slightly different in the book, and much more graphic. Exclamation point. She uses an axe to cut his feet off completely and a blowtorch to cauterize the wound. I had to stop for a minute after reading that. The Sixth Sense, where the husband watches the video of his wife poisoning his daughter. I just wanted to throw something through the TV screen. The scene that got me as a kid was the girl who creeps into his safe place under the blankets with a half blown off face. I might be misremembering exactly what happened. The rest of the movie didn't even bother me at the time, but that scene really did. LOL. The family suicide in Midsommar, specifically the sister, with the duct tape, it just disturbs and saddens me to my core. I haven't seen the movie in months, but that scene still haunts me. The cliff jump and hammer scene takes it for me. The scene in Saw 2 when the chick fell in the pit of syringes, then climbs out with them stuck all over her. I saw that once, turned off the movie and have not watched a single thing Saw related since. It says a lot how, even though that is probably the least bloody and deadly trap in the series, it almost always ranks among the scariest. Not a movie, but the entire scene, with Black Jack Randall and Jamie Fraser at the end of season 1 in Outlander was fricked up. The Strangers, when Kristen is in the kitchen, smoking and getting a glass of water, her back to the living area hall. You just see the masked man emerge from the shadows and stand there for a few minutes, watching her, completely silent and unnoticed. There's no musical sting, nothing. He's out of focus, in the distance. Nothing really happens, but you just don't know how long that will last. Of course, when the camera finally pulls away for a brief moment and gives Kristen the chance to turn around, he's gone. She never knew he was there at all. That scene made me so paranoid. Horror scenes are way more terrifying without that cliché suspense music. That's why I like the found footage genre despite those movies being generally bad. There's a short film shot entirely from a MacBook camera, where there's no music, no nothing. There's barely a narrative. This college girl's the only person in frame for about 98% of it. Just cuts of her like cooking dinner, getting ready to go out in the bathroom, on the phone with her mom, and her and a guy she brought home making out in bed as he tries to get her dress off. As things go on, there's few clues something's up. Someone will buzz her door and she'll go to answer it and get no response. She mentions someone stealing her mail. She calls Apple support because her webcam won't shut off. Stuff like that. There's just this weird sense of dread that builds up. At the very end, she's sleeping in bed watching Netflix on her laptop. Her bedroom door opened behind her, and some guy comes out of the shadows of her hallway and closes her laptop. It's legit terrifying and scarier than anything else I've seen. In Splice, there is a scene where the female creature gets killed, buried, changes sex, comes back, kills its dad, and rapes its mom. One of the only times I ever heard my grandpa swear when after that movie he just said, "What the frick?" In Trainspotting, the scene where the baby dies and the mother is hysterical was one of the hardest scenes I've ever made it through in a movie. The baby didn't die. Later in the movie you can see it crawling on the ceiling. What Lies Below, stepdaughter gets her period on a boat and her stepdad touches the blood and licks it from his fingers. The house that Jack built, when he goes on the date with a woman and her children and then hunts them for sport for like 10 minutes and makes the mother watch him kill her kids. Then he preserves one kid's body and gives him a permanent smile, which I will never ever unsee. I started watching this movie solely because of this comment, and good lord, it's even more unsettling than I imagined. The Butterfly Effect director's cut ending has a scene where fetus Aston Kutcher strangled himself with umbilical cord to avoid being born and messing up Amy Smart and family lives. And that was his legacy. Why his mom had many stillborn miscarriages before him. It's mentioned in the film. All his siblings killed themselves before him. We need to talk about Kevin was hard to watch. Nearly every scene has something uncomfortable. The hamster scene is what came to mind when I saw the thread prompt. I don't know why that was the scene to stick with me and not the rest of the movie in its entirety. I remember the gut punch of Tilda Swinton going home to find her husband and daughter dead. She doesn't even get to say "I told you so" or whatever to her husband. I wonder what his reaction expression was when Kevin aimed the bow at him. Human Centipede 2, where the naked pregnant woman tries to escape the crazy guy by getting into a car, and she gives birth while he's trying to open the door. The screaming newborn slides into the footwell of the car and she crushes it to death while trying to press the accelerator to escape from the crazy dude. Frick that film, and frick anyone involved in its inception. The person that brainstormed those movies definitely has a couple screws loose. The movie Kids, where the boy rapes the girl who was nodding out on drugs, not knowing she had just been diagnosed with HIV. The tanning bed deaths in Final Destination 3. It was so freaking traumatizing. especially since my mom was into indoor tanning at the time, that I wish they used the alternate scene where the girls were just electrocuted instead. Yeah, that scene was hard to watch. Made me think of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, when Julie gets locked in the tanning bed, and Carla finds the maid's body in the dryer around the same time. And I think the guys find a few of the other staff members dead outside as well. Pan's Labyrinth. Glass bottle face smash. Virus 16 inches robot fist punch through the abdomen from the back while tearing the guy in half. I hated that part in the movie where they are torturing the rebel by taking his teeth out one by one. Still disturbs me to this day. It's not a movie, it's a X-Files episode, where the inbreds take their mother away from the house in a car. They bred with her to keep the family going. She lived on a four-wheeled cart under the stove. Literally, fricked up crap. I couldn't watch Bone Tomahawk. Home is the name of that episode. I skip it on rewatch these days. When I was a kid, the human sacrifice scene in the Temple of Doom. Now that I'm an adult it just seems over the top and silly. Now I'd probably say the blood orgy in Event Horizon. Oh, that scene from Event Horizon. Yeah, forgot about that one. Holding eyeballs out while speaking Latin. Come and see, like, nearly all of it. The scene with the girl dancing on the box. The scene in the swamp. The scene with the Nazis in the village. It's just draining. It takes part of your soul away. It's just so sad. So demoralizing. I went in thinking, how bad can this be? Really? Then when it ended I just felt like my brain had been dipped in a vat of used motor oil. Amazing film. Will never watch it again. This is a gut-wrenching film. And I will never watch it again either. For me it was the scene with the cow. I remember thinking how realistic it looked. And wondering how they made the dying cow's eyes dart around in a mix of horror and confusion and suffering while it was dying. I was impressed. It was so believable. Couldn't get the images out of my head. Looked it up after the movie. Turns out they shot a cow with a machine gun and filmed the whole thing and put it in the movie. So that's why it looked so real. You could never do something like that nowadays. The pianist scene where they line the people on the floor and shoot them one by one and the Nazi officer has to reload before the last one. The creepiest scene for me was when that family was escaping through the hole in the wall, and they pulled on their son's feet so hard while his head was stuck that they snapped his neck and killed him. How about some relative non-horror? Because sweet Christmas, this thread is freaking terrifying. The boat scene from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, I know I said non-horror. But this one's from what is technically a kid's movie and it's not Goosebumps or anything like that, so I'll count it. Alternatively, The Final Plague and Prince of Egypt. If you know two things about Exodus, you know what it was. Ah yes, the riverboat acid trip. Not a movie, but the scene in Sons of Anarchy where they're burning Tig's daughter alive, in front of him, in a pit of rotting burned corpses. She keeps screaming "Daddy, help me," and that just really fricks with me. Imagine having to sit and watch your daughter burn to death in front of you. God dang man. 10/10 no thank you. Oh man. There were loads of episodes and so that really made me feel bad. The worst one I can remember is the one where Gemma uses that big fork to do you know what. I did cry a bit. The arm stabbing scene in Green Room. The brutal injuries. The eager glee of the attackers. Disturbs the heck out of me. The rape scene in Watchmen was a weird thing to see in what I thought was a normal superhero movie. I was about 11 at the time. Also came to say Watchmen, but for me the scene that has haunted me was the kidnapper scene with the dogs. Just the sinking feeling of knowing what he'd done, and then Rorschach finding the bones. Ugh. When the soldier killed the butler in The Boy with Striped Pajamas, as a 7-year-old watching this in school it was very disturbing. Cairo or Pulse, in English, a 2001 film. This one scene where the ghost creature starts as a 2D image in the wall, then emerges and begins walking striding towards the viewer in such a slow, methodical and unnatural way. The moment is impossible to escape even as the screen adjusts away. You are still stuck in that moment with the creature moving towards you, the guy hiding from it in the room. If you search Cairo and go to videos, the analysis of the scene I watched should be the first one and say something like anatomy of the scariest scene ever. I think one of the worst one I've seen was the scene in AVP, Requiem when the Predaline forces chest busters down the throats of the pregnant women. Still haunts me to this day. Dr. Sleep, The Shining sequel. The True Knot, the evil group in the movie, survive on steam, which they get from torturing and killing people with The Shining. The more terrified they are and drawn out the torture is, the better for them to get steam. In the movie they get a young boy and do the above. It's as disturbing as heck, as Jacob Tremblay did an amazing acting job of the young boy. It was terrible and disturbing to read in the book and just as bad in the movie for me. I hate the thought of kids being hurt or sick, and this movie depicted it so well that even fictional it was hard to watch. I've read his performance was so convincing a few of the other actors were disturbed by it. From him, Dr. Sleep, 2019. According to director Mike Flanagan, the performance of Jacob Tremblay during the first take of his death scene was so intense that it surprised and scared the other actors, including Rebecca Ferguson, who was so horrified she was stammering and couldn't get her lines out. When the scene was over, a grinning Tremblay jumped up, covered in fake blood, high-fived his father and walked over to the craft service to get a snack, leaving Ferguson and the rest of the cast shell-shocked and traumatized. There's disturbing and then there's disturbing. On the one hand, I've seen some really screwed up stuff, but I don't really care to recall most of it. However, the one film that is actually good that has a scene that messes with me every time is The Truman Show. The scene that really hits hard is when Truman is sitting on the unfinished bridge with his best pal in the world, his lifelong friend. He is telling his friend that everyone is on in it. It's all a sham. The whole world is fake. His friend says, I mean, if everyone is in on it, then I'd have to be in on it too. And that's when Truman realizes his friend isn't on it. He's alone. Fully, completely, alone. And none of his life, nobody he loves or trusts, is real. There was a lonely time in my life where I watched that scene, not for the first time or the last, while drunk, because alcoholism, and man, it fricked me up. I felt like Truman, like nobody around me was real. Don't worry, I'm much better now, but dang. The first, I think, episode of Black Mirror with the politician and the pig. Shut Up and Dance genuinely made me sick for a week after seeing it. My older sister had watched some of the other episodes, but we both saw it for the first time together. After watching it, she just goes, I wanna watch something less depressing. It made me genuinely so angry because the entire episode you're rooting for this kid. He's so likable and awkward and realistic. Then you get to the fight scene where he's forced to fight another guy who's being blackmailed. And just the dialogue is so quick but it hits you like a bus. Just what are you here for? What did you do? I just looked at a couple photos. 1 or 2, that's all. Yeah, I just looked at pictures too. How young were they? And the kid's face going from scared and pitiful to seething. Oof. And my god, the mom calling him as the police cars come by and you can hear her yelling, they're saying it's kids Kenny. Tell me it's not true. Made me feel like a bad person for sympathizing with him the whole time. There's even foreshadowing at the beginning too. 10-minute rape scene from Last House on the Left. I used to work in a movie theater when the remake came out. This woman came in with an about 10-year-old daughter. My boss was like, are you sure you want to bring your kid to see this movie? She said it was fine. He was like, are you really sure, because there's a really graphic rape scene? She said yeah, her son saw it and recommended it. He was like, are you really sure? I'm not giving you a refund if you come out. He was a hard butt. She said yeah, it's not a problem. 20 minutes or however long it takes to get to that scene. They come out and the little girl is absolutely sobbing and the mom is demanding a refund. My boss told her to get lost. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.